Hello everybody and welcome to Data Engineering Stuff. Today we're going to talk about data quality, data contracts and data profiles and how they interact with each other. So first of all, to start working, we need some definitions. The first is that we need some data. Okay, not that I think a bit obvious in data engineering, but in this case we have to make some. We have to say there are some requirements regarding this data because it has to be at least semi-structured, but it would be better to work with totally structured data. Why is that the case? Because we want to create something that is called a profile. So what is a profile? A profile you can create with different frameworks, and it gives you some overview over the data. So for example, it gets you the basic statistic values for every column, like an average, standard derivation, the min max. It can also give you more complex things like correlation matrices or something like that. And yes, it basically gives you an overview over the data from statistics perspective. And then our last point is the data contract. The data contract, it contains really many things: data ownership, the source of the data, the individual fields that are there, and that's what we focus on today. It will give you some data quality statements, like really expressions that you can technically interpret to SQL or to something else to really check your data. And that is something you really can do well with data contracts. So despite all the data that is in a contract, you can have this data quality measurements. And yes, it's really a technical, really detailed specification for your data. And that is something you can automatically use. So it's really helpful to have something like a data contract in place. There are two ways to create a data contract. One way is there's just an existing data contract for your data source. For example, you're working in a data mesh and there's a data product. Then perhaps there simply already is a data contract in place that you can use. But perhaps in practice, it's not often the case that people are provided with a data contract. In this case, you can create it on your own. So you might now think, okay, does it make sense to create some data contract on my own as I'm only a user for a data source? But it makes sense as you have written down all the assumptions you make on the data, and you can align with the producers of the data if that would be always correct. So you have this list of assumptions regarding data quality, and then you can go on with that as I will show now. So how do things correlate? So we have our data, of course. This is always our input. If we talk data quality, we can't measure data quality without data. So we get some data. We could talk only about new batches coming in. It could be always all the data. What is a bit more difficult is working with streaming data. Then you need at least some window you're working on, because the first thing you do is you create the profile. And it doesn't make sense to create a profile on a single data point. So you need at least some data points together to create statistics on them. On the other side, we have the data contract. As said, it could be created by the persons providing the data source, or it could, on the other hand, provided by you. So you have your own assumptions ready for your data. So from the data contract, you can extract the data quality statements. Perhaps there could be written in like a soda or some DBT or something like that. And perhaps I should have mentioned for creating the profile, you could use something like ylogs. There are other tools you could use. You could write it on your own. It's not that difficult. So now we have the data, we have the profile, and we have the data quality statements. And now there's an interesting idea. And the idea is to have not only quality statements referring to the data itself, like, for example, every mail address in field XY is unique, or this value is always positive, or this value is always non-null. No, you can now create data quality statements referring to the profile. So you can say, okay, I know that these fields should always be correlate because it has a business logic that they need to correlate. Or you can say, okay, the mean of this is always in this range or something like that. So we will talk about this in detail, but basically now you can make a data quality check. So you can go through all your assumptions and check them. And then you can either put out alerts. So some red flag raised anywhere on the dashboard, send a mail, whatever. You could do corrective actions. So in some cases, perhaps there is a possibility for you to perhaps fetch data from another data source if the data is missing, or you could calculate a value again. So there could be errors that you can simply correct at this point. Or the last point, and this I think should always be done, you could just log it out. So you say, okay, here's something really weird. So this value should never be negative, but it is negative. So I log it out, and yes, that's something you should at least monitor. The question is how bad it is, how big the impact is of this value being negative. So the output of this, perhaps if you made corrective actions, is checked data. So data that you did your data quality checks on, and perhaps you did some corrective actions. And of course, you can create, or you already have the profile, or you can recalculate the profile. You can recalculate the profile because you changed the data. So you should recalculate it. Okay, so now perhaps something about this data quality check on the profile. So what does this help you? Think of the following. You have an online shop, and this online shop gets you some order information. So there are always orders coming in, and you don't know how many orders there are incoming, but what you can do, and this is where a profile helps you, you can see that there are trends in the data, and you can see that at least this many orders come in, or you can say in relation to another data point. So you can make clever assumption of how many data points should be coming in. If you don't have this profile, and there would be perhaps no orders coming in, you would not be able to decide between a system crash or simply no orders coming in. If you have a profile, then you would see, okay, perhaps on Sundays, there's never an order. You can see this from the profile that this is a common behavior. In a perfect world, you can do something like outlier detection or something like that on the profile. But basically, it tells you something about the data, about how it typically looks, and then you can quite good decide if there is a system failure or if there's just the business going a bit up or down. So this is something that really helps you for things that can't be measured that easily directly on the data, but with statistics based on the historic data. So that's the idea. And now we come to the next point. Imagine that this is one data source in your whole data platform that you use. And you go through all the data quality checks. At the end, you get the check data. Then you do some transformations on it. And then you have the result of this specific process or workflow. Then what could you build? You could build up like 3 workflows from 3 different data sources, and they will be perhaps here transformed to new data. So you have perhaps 3 source systems. You run through all the process, then you combine them. Perhaps you are now from the bronze layer transformed to the silver layer in your medallion architecture data lake, and then you get your next table or your next database, and then you can do the same again. So you can restart the process for the next iteration. So you can say, okay, for this data, I know that I have this contract in place. This contract could be written by yourself. So you can do data quality checks now on the transformed and joined and aggregated data. And then you can go on with the same process again on the silver layer data. So it's possible to do this specific data quality check process for every data source and also on intermediate results later. So you have the highest possibility that you have high quality data. You have checks at the earliest point possible. So perhaps some data can only be checked here because you only know specific things after you join 2 data sources. Only then there is some ground truth in the data that you can do a check on, and then you do it simply here and not earlier because you can't do it earlier. So that's the idea. You have this whole process of using the data, creating a profile, use the data contract to check the data, and then you do this in every workflow. And so you get like a pyramid of data quality checks where you have the respective check at the earliest point you can do it. And so you have, I would say the highest value data that you can get out of it. So I hope that helps. I hope I have brought you the idea near to create profiles and to do data quality checks on the profile. And yes, I hope this helps you with your data quality. And yes, thanks for watching and see you again. Thank you.